Tubi's latest engagement metrics and revenue suggest the streamer is firing on all cylinders. Meanwhile, YouTube is further upping its game with their UI overhaul and new creator minimums. Listen on.
And welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Stream. This is Will Richmond from Video News, and Colin Dixon from End Screen Media is with me. Of course, Colin, what's new for you this week?
Well, I'm just wondering if you've got $6 billion lying around and want to buy a substantial share of the Lakers.
Well, $6 billion ain't going to cut it. Unless you're talking about going in on halvesies for the Lakers, 6 and 6.
Maybe with Bob Iger.
We'll try to wrest the deal away from Bob Iger. I think we might have to pay $14 billion or so in order to wrest the Lakers away from him.
I think we should do that. I think we should try and outbid him.
Well, let's do a little back of the envelope. He's paying $2.5 billion more than Mark Walter paid for the team 14 months ago. $2.5 billion premium for 14 months of work. That's not bad. I'd probably redirect my energy to buy the Celtics. They were sold for $6.1 billion, so I need to do a 20% premium. I probably need to offer $7.3 billion to wrest that team away from the current owner. What do you think? I've got a shot?
Yeah, I'll come in. I'll come in with you on that deal.
You're going to go halvesies with me on that deal?
Rich boys and their toys.
We each come up with 3.5, 3.6, 3.7 billion. I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't be doing this podcast if I had that type of cash, I tell you.
Quite a world we live in, though, right? Wouldn't it
Isn't it?
Be great to be Bob Iger, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we've got a couple of topics we want to talk about today, and we're going to start off by talking a little bit about the fast market, because that market continues to mature and evolve. And we got some really interesting information about Tubi from Fox's results last week that we just wanted to talk about, because it's actually showing as we've said in the past, I know, Will, you've said this several times, what a good buy Tubi was for Fox, and the fact that they've just done a fabulous job of managing it. They've really allowed it to continue to develop as a standalone product. It looks like their hire of CEO Anjali Sud was a really good hire, because she's continued to drive the growth. And this last quarter's results are just a great example of how well it's done. In the announcement, they mentioned that they now had over 100 million monthly active users, that they earned $1 billion in revenue in the last year, which is pretty fabulous. Of course, other people have said that they've done that. Pluto TV in the past has said that they were $1 billion annual business. Though it's not clear that they're still that, because it seems like their share has declined a little since then. But it's pretty fantastic performance. And I think one of the most telling things that Anjali Sud said as part of the announcement of the performance was, she said that their audience growth, they're growing at about 14%. I guess this is probably comparing the quarter this year with the same quarter last year, Will. They're growing at about 14%, but their engagement is growing at 17%. So that means that people that are using the service are actually watching more on the service. And I think she's right to quote that data. That's a very important number, and really illustrates that what they're doing with their content is actually working for the viewers that are coming. And they have really two main thrusts here, Will. The first is they've really focused on creator content. Anjali Sud has said several times that their viewer base and the growth that they're seeing is best in younger viewers. Younger viewers are the ones that they're focused on and are coming to Tubi. And so they've actually put a lot of effort in recruiting creators to come and create content for Tubi. And one of the things she mentioned was that this strategy has totally been validated. I mean, look at what Netflix are doing, and Disney's also doing this now with their TikTok deal. So the strategy has been pretty validated and is obviously paying dividends. And they're also putting much more focus on live sports. They've done several deals in the past for some women's soccer events, for example. Or there was a primary free service availability for the Super Bowl, not this year, but last year. And they had fabulous success with that. And they also, of course, Fox owned the World Cup, and they had a World Cup hub, and they were rebroadcasting live games on that hub primarily. They did do a couple of real live games, but they were rebroadcasting games. And she said that attracted 20 million viewers during that tournament, which is pretty decent performance, bearing in mind that Tubi is a US only service. Pluto TV is available in many different countries, as is the Roku channel. One of the things that they didn't talk about, which I thought was significant, was they really didn't talk about originals. And it seems to me that they're really switching focus now from creating original content for the service to the creators. That's where they're primarily getting their, quote, original content from. And it really does seem to be paying benefits. Of course, they have one of the deepest libraries out there of content, and they are primarily focused on on-demand viewing. They do have fast channels, they do have streaming channels, but they're really focused on on-demand viewing. And so, they're the premier fast service focused on that particular market, absent YouTube, we should say. We're not including YouTube in this data. But anyway, pretty amazing performance so far for Tubi under Fox's stewardship.
Totally agree. I mean, as you said, we've talked for some time in the past about Fox's acquisition of Tubi and how much of a win that's been. And that win seems to be getting bigger all the time, certainly underscored by the data that you just shared. And worth noting that, of course, engagement was the big sore point, let's call it, in the recent Netflix earnings and analyst community feedback. And of course, we agreed that it's not quite clear what's going on with engagement at Netflix, but certainly Tubi being out there able to trumpet this growth is very much to their advantage. It's also intriguing, I think, how they're capitalizing certainly on sports, as you said, but also on this whole creator integration that certainly has been the province of YouTube and TikTok and others. And it seems like Tubi is now not only emphasizing that, but also capitalizing on it, which is great. So I think all that's to the good. And I think that, we don't want to return to the topic that we talked about each of the last 2 weeks, Warner Brothers and Paramount, but I just can't resist saying that in the context of what we're talking about, Tubi's success for Fox, the overall growth of FAST, the fact that, let's face it, we all know prices are rising for everything. Inflation is real for people. That's leading to real budget reassessments of what people choose to pay for, streaming services they choose to pay for, and how free is good. Free is good in a cost-conscious world. And we certainly recall what Roku Scott Rosenberg said way back when, that free was the top searched term on Roku consistently. And so we've got these folks all capitalizing on that, except for, and including, actually, I should add, Paramount with
Pluto.
With Pluto, of course, sorry, with Pluto. But who's noticeably missing from capitalizing on the fast trend? Warner Brothers Discovery. And that's yet, in my view, another way that they're kind of out of step with where the opportunities are in this market. They're very much focused on paid streaming services, and yet we're seeing big growth on the free side. So, I'm not going to beat a dead dog, but if, again, evaluating the value of Warner Brothers Discovery, them missing the fast train is not to their favor. One last thing I want to say, Colin, and then maybe we'll move to YouTube, is that To be fair, I did just a little bit of light trash talking of Fandango last week. When we were when we were talking about Disney offering free services, and I said that it's one thing for Fandango to offer a free service, quite another for Disney to do so. But in all fairness to them, I have actually seen a number of Fandango free service ads on HBO Max, which I subscribe to with ads. And they are very good ads. They make the value proposition very straightforward that you can get onto the service very easily. There's not a whole big login, find your password, that kind of issue. They have a good, deep library. And of course, it's free. And so they do that very nicely in their ads. And I just wanted to give props to Fandango if anybody was listening from Fandango and felt like I was being unfair to them.
Yeah. There were a couple of other things I wanted to note just before we leave this topic. Well, first of all, we talked about this before that Fox made an offer to buy Roku. And this would, of course, unite the top two fast services in the US. I think I mentioned this the other day that Tubi had 2.3% share of TV viewing time in Nielsen's last The Gauge report, and the Roku channel had 3.1%. So that would give Fox control of 5.4% of TV viewing in the US, which is a significant number, far more than pretty much everybody except Netflix, Disney, and YouTube on TV. So that's a very significant number. The other thing is that the fast market is growing. It's estimated, I think I saw Omdia data that said it was about $6 billion this year. And I've seen other data estimating it will grow to 9 billion or 10 billion by the end of the decade, which is a substantial amount. But I actually think, I feel like that's underperforming the opportunity for fast. I also think that is not including YouTube revenue. If it was including YouTube revenue, it would be at least 50% higher, maybe even more, because we know what a juggernaut YouTube has become on television in the US and around the world. So, for context, I think the $6 billion number is probably undercounting what the free market is really doing on television, because it doesn't include YouTube. And it also doesn't really include, we don't really know what Disney's strategy is going to be here. Disney has a lot of very interesting content. If they were to lean on ABC content and some of their back catalog in their free offering, I think it would attract a lot of interest from folks, and that it could do extremely well too. So I think there's still room for a lot of growth here, particularly if they resist the clarion call of pushing up ad loads. There's still a lot of growth in the fast market to come. So I can't wait to see what happens going forward.
Yeah, amen to all that, Colin. And when the Fox Roku deal was first announced and we did our podcast on it, I said that I was kind of neutral to negative on the deal. A couple of reasons I cited was Fox's lack of device experience. And of course, devices are what gives Roku permission to play in this whole ad space in the first place. So I was a little concerned about lack of experience there, and also noted that, let's face it, Fox is a controversial brand, and there are going to be people out there who, when they realize that their Roku device and all their data is now being fed into Fox, are going to hesitate about that and may indeed switch over to some other device. So those two, I kind of stand by those two concerns. But having said that, or maybe moving more into the neutral to maybe even neutral/positive category, given Tubi's positive results here and everything else we're talking about relative to the opportunity in fast.
Well, maybe if they want to do that, maybe they should get themselves a Google TV device, Will, because I was reading this week that Google TV dumped a whole bunch of on-demand content, 10,000 hours of on-demand content into their free play Funnily enough, I got on my Sony Google TV this morning and was looking for this content, and I said, show me free movies. And I can tell you there was no sign of it in that search. All Google TV told me about was a whole bunch of pay stuff, not free. Very different experience than saying that same phrase into say a Roku. So, but maybe if they do put this stuff in there and we can actually find it, that there would be an interesting alternative for folks. If they don't want to go with a Roku, they can go with a Google TV device. But I don't know. Google TV seems to be not a big focus for Google anymore these days.
Somewhere in some dusty corner of some mammoth Google data center, sit pallets and pallets and pallets of shrink-wrapped Google TV devices, unsold at any price. Unfortunately,
Maybe that's true. Maybe
why
that's
do I
true.
keep trash talking, Colin? If you could please ask me to stop doing that. I don't know why. Must be some of this 90+ degree heat here in Boston that's making me ornery.
Well, why don't we switch topics to another Google property, which is doing way, way better than Google TV, and that's YouTube.
Well, YouTube, as we've talked about so many times on this podcast, is an 800-pound gorilla that, based on two moves here in the past week, seems poised to increase to 900 pounds or who knows more. First thing I want to talk about is that they have revamped the thresholds for creators to be able to generate revenue off of the YouTube platform. So, short story is they've essentially doubled the threshold now. You need 8,000 qualified watch hours in the last 365 days, or 20 million shorts views in the past 90 days to qualify for the YouTube Partner Program. And of course, that's the revenue sharing program. That's up from 4,000 watch hours over past 365 days, or 10 million shorts views in the past 90 days. So they've essentially doubled the threshold for creators. And of course, for fledgling creators, that's not good news. It means that the on-ramp to earning a living from your creative output just got higher. There's no sugarcoating that, of course. But at the same time, it has the ancillary benefit of really, incenting those who are successful on YouTube to be ever more successful on YouTube, because more and more of the overall pie of revenue generated will now be directed to them. So it may be a little bit of a case of the big getting bigger, but I think it's a necessary step because YouTube, as we know, it's basically been an open sandbox for anybody to put up whatever they want, which is great. Democratization of video, no argument there. But at some point rather, YouTube has to kind of tighten its ship a little bit and figure out who's really worth paying and who isn't. So they're updating the standards, and we'll see how all that flies. But very much related to this is the fact that YouTube is now, and we're referencing a Fast Company, very interesting Fast Company article that included extensive remarks from Jonathan Terliski, who's the VP of user experience at YouTube, that YouTube is now undergoing what he characterized as the most significant design overhaul in YouTube history, which is very much a work in progress. And he kind of goes through a step-by-step of how they had been traditionally guided by boosting traditional KPIs without necessarily having a clear design infrastructure, as he put it, in place. Now they're very much orienting themselves toward cutting back on unnecessary features and streamlining design, and really trying to make the user experience as positive and beneficial as possible. So in a tangible way, that sounds like that's going to mean fewer buttons, clearer user and creator homepages, more holistic thinking across different devices and ways of accessing it. He articulated 5 key objectives: making content the star, prioritizing relevance ruthlessly, choosing the simpler option, being a good neighbor, ensuring that the new features fit within the overall UI, and building for the ecosystem by considering design at the very beginning of any product engineering process. So, reading through his comments and kind of aligning that with the increase in the minimum thresholds, I thought that all of that sounded very promising in terms of the evolution that YouTube is going through from really being, as you said before, kind of an open sandbox to now being a little bit more professional, a little tighter. No doubt acknowledging that they've seen huge growth on connected TVs and that design has candidly probably lagged a bit. And so this sounds like an effort to sort of up their game. And he also mentioned, I think worth noting, that they have already seen significant increases in engagement with the new design that's been some of the new design elements that have been rolling out, although he didn't provide any metrics. And he also noted that this is really the tip of the iceberg, what we've seen so far in terms of design and UI updates from YouTube. So I think all that, assuming that the design updates are beneficial, which of course would be their goal, this sounds like potentially a real win for creators, for users to be able to find their way to good content, the content that they enjoy. Also a win for viewers to be able to get to their content, for creators, and importantly also for YouTube to the extent that it enhances their engagement and also their monetization. So nothing not to like here from my perspective.
Yeah, indeed. And well, first of all, let's talk about YouTube on television specifically, and it continues to do extremely well. I mentioned that it's almost certainly not included in the viewing figures, in the viewing estimates for fasts. And here's why. According to Nielsen's The Gauge, it occupied 13.8% of total TV viewing hours in May of 2026. 13.8%. That is remarkable for just a single service. I would also point out that it is pretty much the only named service in Nielsen's Gauge data that has shown, I think, meaningful growth over the last year. Well, you could possibly say the same for the Roku channel, which has picked up it looks like about 0.5%, but YouTube has grown 1%. Over 1% in the last year, when all the other services have been sort of bouncing around the same share. So it is clearly doing something very right in the television environment. That said, I do think that there is a lot of room for improvement, Will. And so it's good to hear that they have it sounds like a high-flying UI team looking at this and trying to make improvements in the user experience. Engagement is everything, of course, for an ad-supported service. But I would say that there's one thing I'm a bit concerned about. I think there was something buried in that Fast Company article saying they're looking to sort of unify the experience across, quote, surfaces, which, as you pointed out, is the new trendy term for screens. But I do think that there is something very unique about the television experience that separates it cleanly and clearly from a mobile experience. And so if they're looking to unify experiences, I think that could negatively impact television viewing if their focus is primarily on mobile. I know from my perspective, I'm a frequent viewer of YouTube on television. Both my spouse and I are. We watch a lot of YouTube. It's our sort of default free offering these days. When we're, not watching something else, we'll stick YouTube on and watch stuff there. I find that there's some lumpiness with that experience. Finding my favorite creators, I find quite difficult sometimes. I feel like the changes that the UI design team are focused on may end up favoring the algorithm recommendations more. And I think that's not necessarily aligned with what people would want on television. Very often when I get on and I'm watching on TV, I want to find a favorite channel that I've subscribed to. Like, for example, I like Astrum quite a lot at the moment. I'm watching quite a lot of content from that channel. And I find myself very often having to dig through my subscriptions to find that channel to watch. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there to optimize, but I think it could be a mistake to optimize the viewing across services. I think they should still be thinking about particularly the television as a unique screen and a unique experience. So I do hope that they'll keep that in mind and improve things there. But overall, you know, I have to say, I've been in mind several times lately of a piece I wrote about 10 years ago, Will, when YouTube was really beginning to get to grips with what it meant to be on television and beginning to refine its television experience. And it occurred to me that they were establishing the platform for television, particularly free TV, going forward. And, you know, here we are 10 years later, and they have 14% share of total TV viewing in the US. So I think this really is a testament to the fact that that is exactly what they set out to do. And that is exactly what they have done. It's a remarkable achievement, I think, over the last 10 years.
And there's certainly no argument here, Colin. And, you know, to your point, I've had a uneven, shall we say, experience watching YouTube on TV as well. I've sort of chalked that up to the idea that they've just grown so rapidly in connected TV that the UI hasn't kind of kept pace, if that makes sense.
Haven't kept up, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it sounds like that's what they're trying to address. And I really liked how he talked about a, quote, new design culture there at YouTube that's cross-functional, and they call it a design systems team. There is so much good research out there now about good design, and I would like to believe, and, you know, am optimistic about the fact that they'll execute well on that. Certainly Netflix has written a great playbook as far as UI across screens or surfaces, whatever we want to call them. But I'll just make one last point, and then maybe, I don't know, we'll see if there's anything else on this. But I just want to observe that, you know, doing these types of design enhancements for all of us who have ever been involved with product design, and how much effort and resources and testing and retesting and trialing and data collection take, especially at the scale that YouTube operates at, take significant resources to do well. And to the extent that players in this market are better resourced, like a YouTube, like a Netflix, like a Disney, I think that represents a real competitive advantage that helps them succeed over time. Also being able, importantly, to innovate with AI, which of course is another heavy resource intensive undertaking, benefits those who with strong balance sheets. Conversely, those companies that have weaker balance sheets, maybe servicing big debt loads, hint, hint, and also, you know, frankly, are just not operating at the same scale with the same leverage as these bigger players, I think really are at a competitive disadvantage going forward. Yep. And my hunch is that YouTube recognizes that, and they're sprinting toward that advantage with these design overhauls.
Yep. I guess the last point I want to make is just a real nod to history, Will, and that is YouTube is a outlet for content that has been necessary and simply didn't exist in the traditional TV world. We needed an unregulated channel, a channel not controlled by big media companies, to allow common folks like you and me to participate and let people that were interested see what we're doing. And this was, as I say, this was something that just didn't exist before. And it has really unleashed a level of creativity that we knew was out there, but I didn't think we realized how much of it there was, and it's just a remarkable success story, and reinforces the idea that creative talent doesn't only exist in Hollywood or Bollywood or specific areas. It's everywhere, and now they have an outlet to get on TV, which they just didn't have before. Of course, the bar to get paid for that just went up, but at least they have a shot at their 5 minutes of fame or 15 minutes of fame.
Well, this ain't beanbag anymore, Colin. YouTube is in the majors, and they're going to play that way. And I can't resist noting with some irony that when you refer to YouTube allowing people like us to be involved, the like us are actually not doing a video podcast, while others have leaned into that. So we've remained a little camera shy, which for various reasons not worth getting into right now. But we can certainly acknowledge how creators of all stripes have just blossomed in the YouTube era.
Haven't they just? But anyway, I think that's just about it for today.
Agreed. So, Colin, great chatting, and we'll plan for next week to reconvene and see what's on the radar then.
We will indeed.
Okay, Colin. Good chatting. Thanks, everyone, for listening in, and we'll see you all again next week.
Inside the Stream is a production of In-Screen Media and Video News, all rights reserved.